Today's reviews that we're going to look at are absolutely going to terrify you. Hey, I'm Maike Imberg, workplace culture and inclusion consultant, and on this channel we talk real. And what we're going to look at today is very juicy. In today's episode, we're going to look at a medium-sized global professional services company. As part of that, we're really going to uncover what psychological safety actually means. What happens if it's not a given, if it's not embedded in the company, and also what leadership needs to do to shift that culture. Let's dive right in. The first review is from last year in August, and it has a 1 star. The title of this review is Lacking Integrity. Personally, I think that's still rather kind after reading through the actual review. So the pro here is a handful of the employees were really great people. They offered a good amount of tools that assisted with outreach. So the person has worked there for over a year, and we have definitely seen that reflected in previous episodes, that a handful of other employees, my work buddies, they're actually what keep me at the company. Let's look at the cons. For every negative and honest review, they have an internal employee post a positive review. What? We were directly asked to post positive reviews, which is not ethical to begin with. Yeah, listen to this. Management frequently denied the realities and concerns of employees. They preach a culture that isn't actually acted upon. Less than ethical tactics to acquire customers and candidates were encouraged and not punished. Wild, isn't it? Making it a hostile environment amongst employees. So not just from the top down, but also amongst employees. Employee feedback was ultimately ignored, though they would pretend to listen. This is a key bit in a toxic workplace culture. The employees who have been there the longest get away with doing less than the bare minimum, while newer employees are held to standards they aren't even given the opportunity to meet and then fired when they don't. Upper management lacks integrity and humanity. Lacking integrity in the title, right? And the advice to management, oh my God, and this is heartbreaking. Honestly, they wouldn't listen anyways. Let's just stop and reflect a little bit on what we've just heard. Isn't that an absolutely awful review? The company did respond, and here's what they said. Thank you for your comments here. While we may not always agree with every piece of feedback, such as we would never tolerate unethical tactics, we always listen. Your understanding of listening to employees is a little bit odd, isn't it? This industry is by no means an easy one to succeed in, which is why the rewards are so great. We try hard to give every employee the opportunity/time needed to succeed. In this case, as you reported here, more than 2 years. But it doesn't always work out. We sincerely wish you the best of luck and hope you find a position you will excel at. Oh my God, what a BS response. Excuse my language. That's basically gaslighting. Yeah, gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse where a person basically manipulates another by making them question their own reality, their own sanity. The abuser uses tactics like denial. This is not ownership by the company. This is not taking accountability. What the person mentioned in their review, unethical tactics, to respond by saying we do always listen, but we don't always agree with it. It's not about whether you agree or not. Here's an employee who is trying to be very honest about their experiences in a clearly toxic workplace environment. And what you're doing is you're making them feel like it was basically their own fault for having the experience they had. Even saying we give everybody the opportunity and time needed to succeed. And the industry is by no means an easy one to succeed in. We all know there are industries and they can be tough. And it's not just a 9 to 5. And there are a lot of pressures. Yes, of course. But Doesn't that mean that you as an organization should go above and beyond to create a safe environment for all of your employees to perform? Of course, not every role that I go into is really for me at the end of the day. Sometimes my values might not be aligned. Sometimes it's not really what I expected. But that's not what this person is talking about. This person is talking about a toxic workplace culture. There's a very low level of psychological safety here. We're now going to look at the second review, and then we're going to dive deeper into psychological safety. The second review is just a couple of weeks ago, also a 2-star review. And the headline is Mismanagement of Resources. The pro is, again, nice people and work from home, which realistically in most industries by now is a given anyway, that you're working from home at least 2 days a week. The cons in this review are inflated titles and leadership salaries. The CEO is the owner, but unfortunately isn't present as much. Things were better with him involved more. The company is so small they don't need a COO, they need an operations manager. They don't need a president of sales, they need a managing director. They don't need a VP of finance, they need a finance manager. And advice to management, the industry is tough right now, so drop some of the wasted resources you are spending on leadership salaries. This reflects that the workplace culture has not necessarily improved a great deal over the span of a year. This review from a couple of weeks ago didn't even get a response. The last response to a Glassdoor review that this company engaged in was 2 months ago. So they basically stopped bothering. That's very common. I noticed that on Glassdoor. And I think it's a real shame because organizations need to hold themselves accountable. Leadership needs to hold themselves accountable much more, especially in those current tough times, right? Going back to psychological safety. You might have heard about it, but this here is the model of psychological safety and its 4 stages by Timothy Clark. So at the bottom, we basically have feeling excluded. That's what the first review alludes to, right? Unethical practices, employees are not being heard. There even seems to be stuff going on between employees, not just necessarily just from the top down. Last week I mentioned that the worst type of leadership is the laissez-faire leadership. I take it even further. The worst type is a laissez-faire approach to my leadership that is fueled by ignorance, by my ego, by selfishness. Because this first review talks about unethical practices to get customers and candidates. And those kinds of unethical tactics are being tolerated. They're being ignored. That's the worst, because what that does to everybody else is instilling fear. I'm not going to speak up and question this unethical practice. I might lose my job. Going back to what the company has said, they're not holding their hands up. What I would have liked to see here is we are absolutely mortified to hear that. Nobody should ever feel like the way you felt during your employment with us. I would seriously question somebody even using the terms unethical practices. That calls for a big audit in their management and leadership practices. But yet we see a lot of organizations really shying away from doing that, brushing it under the carpet. Guess what? If you continue to brush it under the carpet, nobody speaks up. Harassment, sexual harassment, bullying amongst employees, potentially from the leadership to employees, takes place. Because it's exactly in those cultures where those negative behaviors manifest, really thrive, and just become part of the DNA. And that's how we lose talent. If we want to get more money as an organization, if we want to increase our bottom line, if we want to be the best competitor out there in our market, we need to do better. We need to create psychological safety. Now, the second review here touches on visibility or lack of visibility of leadership. They mention that when the CEO was more visible, more on the ground, things were better. Now, it doesn't matter too much what they mean by things were better, but what this highlights is, yes, The best organizations in terms of performance, in terms of productivity, happiness and well-being of their employees are those where the leadership actively makes time to literally go around the workplace and actually have conversations with their employees and ask them about their experiences and gets input. That's creating safety. So the first stage of psychological safety is to feel included. And I can do that as a leader by making myself a little bit vulnerable, by asking the right questions, by not shutting employees down. And of course, it absolutely starts by engaging in ethical, good, inclusive practices and calling out negative behavior. The second stage of psychological safety is learner safety. I feel safe to learn in my team. I might even ask for help. Contributor safety is this next level where I do feel like I can actively contribute a new idea without even being asked. I feel safe to contribute, maybe even with a little challenge, a lower level challenge. The status quo of psychological safety is challenger safety. And that literally means we have created a team environment where every single member of that team really feels like they can actively challenge the status quo, because that team understands what their objectives are and how it relates to the mission, the vision, the values. That's what we mean when we say taking employees by the hand, taking them on that journey, and making sure people really live and breathe the values. Together we can really innovate. Now we can see how in both of these reviews there's no psychological safety or very little psychological safety. And organizations still now absolutely underestimate the negative impact of that. Now, if you're an employee and any of this speaks to you, or part of this speaks to you, then here's my advice. Firstly, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your safety system outside of work. But also do have a little think, are there some allies? Are there work buddies, people that you really have trusting relationships with in the workplace that you could confide in? We're likely going to find that they might have similar experiences, right? Thinking about any potential leaders, are there some people that you might be able to confide in that have some sort of decision power? Maybe you do have a good relationship with HR. You do trust them to keep things confidential and you would like to talk to them. But if not, and I'm going to be very blunt here, try and get out as soon as you can. Because if you tried internally to be a bit of a change maker, to advocate for yourself, to call out negative behaviors, unethical behaviors, if you tried that and nothing moves, then it's just a toxic workplace, and that can only change from the top. This organization would really benefit from taking a brave and bold approach, listen to its employees, continue asking those detailed, brave questions where I'm quite afraid of the answers, but I recognize I need to hear the answers. If I was a CEO, I'd want to know about these experiences because I'd want to create a workplace where nobody ever feels like that, because it's going to cost me money. Talents are going to leave, which means I need to invest more in recruitment. We spoke about systems and resources as well. So I don't want to waste any money on resources that employees don't actually deem as helpful. Why would I do that? I'd want to invest more into the development of my employees because it's going to make them stay longer, because it's going to enable them to move up within my company and go to an area that they want to learn something new about. That's how you create change. So there's a real opportunity here. And there's many other companies out there like this. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because we need to shine many more lights, literally, on those everyday experiences of employees. And many more leaders, line managers, CEOs need to recognize this and need to recognize that we need to focus on those experiences because they are giving us so much insight into what we could change. There's a lot of quick wins here in terms of change. And of course, some of that absolutely is about strategy, making sure that we're taking employees on that journey. But for today, let's remember, psychological safety needs to come first, and then performance and productivity will follow, not the other way around. Thank you so much. Join us next week for episode 5.